Skull and Bones is back. Ubisoft Singapore's pirate game that we last saw at E3 2018 has finally sailed back into view, and it's out this November. But what exactly is it? Despite how it looks, Skull and Bones is a very different game to Assassin's Creed Black Flag. In fact, it's much more like Sea of Thieves than any of Ubisoft's traditional open world games. To make sure you're all set and ready to sail, we spoke to game director Ryan Barnard to find out the 7 things you need to know about Skull and Bones. Unlike most of Ubisoft's open world games, Skull and Bones does not have a campaign.
We do have pivotal characters or kingpins in the game that you'll meet in your journey through the game, and they will have bits of story and background that you will be able to do with jobs or the contracts with them. But it is definitely not a storyline driven game. You don't finish Skull and Bones and have a credits and a cutscene at the end, so it's something we want to perpetuate as a live game for years and years to come.
Instead of a storyline written by Ubisoft, Skull and Bones' story is one you make yourself. You set your own objectives, decide how you'll sail the waves, and plunder ships to increase your wealth and infamy. You can do all of this solo, but Skull and Bones is a shared world game with up to 20 players on each server. You can team up with those other players, or hunt them down, sink their ships, and steal their treasure. So if there's no campaign, what exactly do you do in Skull and Bones? Well, the Indian Ocean is full of opportunities. There's plenty of characters offering work contracts that lead to adventure, explosions, and, most importantly, heaps of treasure.
We want them to be pirate-oriented, so it's about bringing some dangerous contraband to different places around the world, or going after and taking out named pirates that are causing trouble for one of the kingpins, or plundering one of the settlements to get a certain item. So generally they fall into categories of getting things for the pirate that wants those things, or taking things from one place to another for them that's very dangerous along the way, and you can't lose it or you'll end up paying the consequences.
As you explore the ocean, you'll discover trade routes, hidden islands, and enemy armadas. Each one is a new opportunity to fill your hold with booty and raise your infamy. And the more infamous you become, the more you'll be respected by the world's characters. Infamy is Skull and Bones' progression system. As you increase your infamy rank, you'll unlock the ability to captain more impressive ships and experience the game's higher level opportunities.
Your name is a big deal. So how can we work in this risk reward, the progression into something that you basically risk, as they did back in this time when you're taking on activities. So if you sink a big ship or a named ship, people hear about it and your infamy grows. And that gives you access to different pirates wanting to work with you and do deals with you. And that's exactly the same flow that our progression follows.
The highest rank of the infamy ladder is your big overarching goal, to become a pirate kingpin and sit among the most fearsome pirates in the Indian Ocean.
If you play Skull and Bones, you play regularly and you invest the time, you will reach Kingpin. But Kingpin is where a new type of experience starts, and that can end up being a little bit more competitive.
Becoming a kingpin isn't something that happens overnight. You start with little more than the clothes on your back and must work your way up from sea urchin to sailor to scheming captain. Along the way, you'll always need to be aware of Skull and Bones' survival mechanics.
At the start of the game, you're left with basically nothing. So you need to craft your first spear, and you need to hunt some sharks or some fish to be able to cook and grill them to be able to feed yourself and your crew, or they'll mutiny against you and toss you overboard. You know, to be a good captain, you need to keep your crew happy, and when they're out sailing at sea, it's hard to run these big ships. So we have a concept called morale, and that will drain slowly or quickly depending on the ship type you're in and how far you are in your infamy. And in order to keep that maintained, you need to feed them.
As you become more successful, what you need to do to survive changes. Managing your ship becomes ever more important and challenging. You'll need to keep the hull repaired and the cannons loaded, but also keep your weight in careful balance. It's tempting to loot all the treasure you find, but if your ship is overweight, you'll find it difficult to outrun your enemies. Sometimes it's best to throw some of that cargo overboard for the good of staying alive. Making a spear and cooking a fish is enough to survive, but to thrive you'll want to make the most of Skull and Bones' crafting system. It starts with, well, almost everything you can find.
We want this feeling of everything in the world to have value. So either if you find something, it's something you can use immediately, or it's something you can save for a blueprint or a design later, or it's something that you'll need as a component to a recipe for food, or it could be something you can sell.
Raw materials collected by gathering and plundering can then be taken to craftsman NPCs, who can turn them into valuable items for your ship. That could be building a set of new cannons that can more efficiently blast an enemy vessel to splinters, armor plates to protect your hull, or even furniture to make your ship feel a little more personalized. Your ship is your most important possession in Skull and Bones. As the game is set almost entirely at sea, your ship is both your transport and weapon. As such, Ubisoft Singapore has put effort into making sure it's easy to set up your sails and fire your cannons.
I think it's very intuitive. It's very easy to pick up with sailing your different ships that we have in the game. Combat is something that we also wanted to make sure that is very intuitive, something that's, like if you were playing a shooter.
There's a variety of ships to captain, from tiny dhows and sloops to the mid-sized sandbucks and brigantines and beyond. Each can be fitted with a wide range of guns, from classic cannons to more specialised equipment like flamethrowers and the multi-barreled mortar. Combining the right ships and guns will be important, as different contracts will demand different approaches. A courier task requires an entirely different setup to a fortress assault, for instance. It's also important to remember that your ship and cannons aren't your only tools. Smart use of your crew is vital if you want to sail away with the best loot.
As you do damage, your crew gets kind of whipped into this fervor, and at some point you'll be able to execute what we call a crew-to-crew attack. If you time it right to where your enemy ship is lower health, they will execute a boarding maneuver, and that hooks them in, they strap in, and that's the only way that you get all the loot in the cargo.
While most of Skull and Bones world is made up of water, there are locations on land that you can visit and explore. These areas are similar to base camps in games like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. They are where you'll meet NPCs and other players, take on contracts, craft new items, and build up your fleet. The biggest of these locations are the pirate dens, but smaller outposts can be found scattered throughout the Indian Ocean.
So in the dens, this is where you'll have your warehouse, where you will most likely be socializing with other pirates, where you can craft all of your different weapons and new ships and those kind of things, where you can refine materials. Outposts, which are scattered all the way throughout the world, these rotate. So it could be one of the factions is at that outpost at this time, and they're offering a certain set of contracts just for the time that they're actually there in that outpost. Places where you buy the new blueprints or designs as you progress through Infamy will be in these outposts. You'll also be able to find some resources. You'll be able to find treasure maps, which are pretty cool in the game. You'll find bits of lore that lead to the story. Why is everybody here? What happened? There's a deeper underlying story that it's not a linear narrative, but it's something you can investigate and learn about as a player.
And those are the 7 things you need to know about Skull and Bones. It's set to release this November, so be sure to stay tuned to IGN for more information about what to expect in the Indian Ocean. And don't forget to check out the Skull and Bones CGI trailer.